The earth was cold and damp. Lisa's nails clawed at the packed soil, her chest heaving in frantic, shallow breaths. She could hear the muffled sound of him above her, familiar, chilling, somewhere close. The creak of wood from the shed echoed in her ears. Her eyes burned from the dirt in them. She tried to scream, but the gag in her mouth turned her cry into a weak, muffled moan. Above her, footsteps crunched on gravel, heavy, measured. Then a voice, calm, almost gentle. "You should have been grateful, Lisa." It was Deacon Harold's voice. The same man who had stood in church just 2 days ago, preaching about mercy and kindness. A sudden weight of dirt hit her chest. He was covering the last bit of the hole. She thrashed harder, but the walls closed in. The air grew thin. Every second felt like her last. And then, silence. Lisa Monroe had been a widow for 3 years. 50 years old. With silver streaks in her dark hair and lines of both laughter and grief on her face. She was the kind of woman who made you feel welcome with just a smile. People in the small Tennessee town of Cedar Hollow said she had a heart too big for her own good. After her husband, Mark, died of a sudden heart attack, the house had felt unbearably empty. She had her church friends, her garden, and her 2 cats, but loneliness crept into her evenings like a shadow. That's when she met Deacon Harold Pierce. Harold was 62, tall, with a soft-spoken manner that made him seem harmless. He had been part of the Cedar Hollow Baptist Church for decades, known for organizing potlucks and visiting the sick. When he told Lisa he had fallen on hard times and needed a place to stay for just a few weeks, she didn't hesitate. "It's just until I get back on my feet," he had said with that gentle smile. At first, it was fine. Harold kept to himself, paid for groceries now and then, and even helped repair her back fence. But Lisa began noticing little things. Money missing from her purse, late-night phone calls where Harold's voice turned sharp and low, and strangers coming to the house when he thought she was asleep. One rainy evening, she overheard him talking on the phone. His voice wasn't the warm church tone she knew. It was cold, threatening. "I told you I'll take care of it. She won't be a problem much longer." Lisa froze in the hallway, heart pounding. When Harold hung up, he noticed her standing there, his eyes locked on hers for a moment too long. Then he smiled, too wide, too forced. The next morning, Lisa told her friend Judy at the church that she thought Harold should move out. Judy agreed, but warned her to be careful how you tell him. Lisa planned to speak with him after Sunday service. But that Sunday never came for her. On Saturday night, neighbors heard raised voices from Lisa's house. Then silence. By Sunday morning, her garden shed looked different. The dirt around it was freshly turned, darker than the rest of the yard. And Lisa Monroe was gone. The call came in just before 8 a.m. on Sunday. Possible missing person, Cedar Hollow. 50-year-old female, last seen Saturday night. Detective Emily Carter had been with the county sheriff's department for 9 years, but missing person cases in a small Tennessee town were rare, and they usually ended with someone being found safe at a friend's house. Still, something about this one made her uneasy. She pulled up to Lisa Monroe's property just as the church bells began ringing in the distance. The little white house looked ordinary enough, but the atmosphere was thick, tense. Judy, Lisa's friend, was pacing near the porch, clutching a folded sweater. "She never misses church," Judy said quickly, "and she didn't answer my calls last night. I came by this morning, and the door was unlocked. But she's not here." Inside, nothing was obviously wrong. No broken glass, no signs of a struggle. But the living room felt frozen, as if someone had left in the middle of doing something. A mug of tea sat cold on the coffee table. Lisa's phone and purse were on the couch. Emily made her way to the back door. That's when she noticed the garden. More specifically, the shed. The air smelled of freshly turned earth, and the ground in front of the shed looked like it had been dug up and hastily covered again. There were muddy boot prints leading from the shed toward the back fence. Prints too big to be Lisa's. "Who else lives here?" Emily asked. Judy's face darkened. "That church deacon, Harold Pierce. He's been staying here for a while. I didn't like it from the start." "Where is he now?" "I don't know. His truck's not here." As Emily was taking notes, a deputy waved her over. "Detective, you want to see this." Inside the shed, tucked behind a stack of gardening tools, they found a shovel with damp soil still clinging to the blade. Emily's pulse quickened. Get AK-90 out here. Now. While the dogs were being brought in, Emily's mind raced. She knew Harold Pierce. Everyone in town did. He'd officiated weddings, helped raise money for sick children, even led prayers at community events. If he had something to do with Lisa's disappearance, it would shake the entire town to its core. The dogs began barking near the shed, pawing at the freshly turned dirt. Emily ordered the team to hold off digging until they had proper forensic support. But in her gut, she already knew. A few minutes later, a neighbor approached the property line, glancing nervously at the police cars. "I'm not sure if it's important," the neighbor said, "but I saw Harold out here late last night. He was carrying something big. Looked heavy. Then I heard him hammering in the shed. I thought maybe he was fixing something." Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. This wasn't going to be a simple missing person case. And if her instincts were right, time was already running out. By Monday morning, Cedar Hollow felt like a town holding its breath. The local diner was unusually quiet, whispers replacing the usual chatter. The news that Lisa Monroe was missing, and that police had focused their search on her backyard, spread faster than the smell of fresh coffee. Detective Emily Carter had barely slept. The soil samples from the shed area had been sent to the lab, but results would take days. In the meantime, Harold Pierce was nowhere to be found. His truck hadn't been spotted on any of the major roads leading out of town. Emily sat in her unmarked car outside the church, watching parishioners file in for a morning prayer service. She wasn't there for the prayers. She was there to see if Harold would show his face. Inside, the sanctuary was lit with soft, golden light from the stained glass windows. The pastor, a short man with thinning hair, stood at the pulpit, leading the congregation in a hymn. Emily scanned the pews. No Harold. After the service, she approached the pastor. "Pastor Lee," she said quietly, flashing her badge, "have you seen Deacon Pierce in the last 24 hours? Pastor Lee frowned. "Not since Saturday night. He left early from the fellowship meeting. Said he wasn't feeling well." "Did he seem upset? Nervous?" "Not exactly nervous, but distracted. He had that faraway look in his eyes, like he was carrying something heavy on his mind." Emily's next stop was Harold's sister's house, 2 towns over. She claimed she hadn't seen him in weeks and insisted Harold would never hurt a soul. Still, her hands shook as she spoke, and she kept glancing at the clock like she wanted Emily gone. Back at the station, the missing person flyers had already been printed. Lisa's smiling face stared up from Emily's desk. The photo had been taken at last summer's church picnic, her hand holding a slice of watermelon, eyes full of warmth. Emily's partner, Detective Ray Holloway, walked in carrying a brown paper evidence bag. "Guess what I pulled from the shed's trash bin," he said, sliding it toward her. Inside was a torn piece of fabric. Floral print, stained dark in one corner. Emily's breath caught. She'd seen Lisa wear a dress with that exact pattern to church not 2 weeks ago. They sent it to the lab for DNA testing. But the presence of the stain, whether blood or something else, was enough to make Emily's skin prickle. That night, she drove back to Lisa's house alone. The property was quiet, bathed in moonlight. She walked to the shed, the scent of damp earth stronger than before. She crouched down, running her hand over the uneven ground. And then she noticed something new, just beyond the shed, half hidden in the grass. A small silver cross necklace. She knew for a fact Lisa never took it off. Emily straightened, her heart pounding, the quiet night suddenly feeling like it was closing in on her. Somewhere out there, Harold Pierce was still moving freely, and Emily was starting to think he knew she was getting close. By Tuesday morning, the search for Lisa Monroe had spread beyond Cedar Hollow. Local news stations ran her photo alongside the words "Missing Tennessee Woman." Foul play suspected. The sheriff's office was flooded with calls, some from people offering to help, others claiming they had seen Harold Pierce miles away. Most turned out to be dead ends. Detective Emily Carter felt the pressure building. Every hour without answers meant Lisa's chances of being found alive slipped further away. At the daily briefing, Emily pinned a large map to the wall. Red pushbins mark Harold's known haunts. The church, a fishing spot by the river, a cabin he once rented near the county line. "We need boots on the ground at every one of these locations," she said, her tone clipped. "Search vehicles, abandoned barns, anywhere someone could hide or hide someone else." Ray Holloway, her partner, handed her a folder. Lab results came back on the fabric from the shed. "It's Lisa's blood." The room went quiet. Emily's jaw tightened. "Then we're no longer calling this just a missing persons case. This is an assault investigation, possibly homicide. But until we have a body, we can't confirm." As teams dispersed the search, Emily and Ray visited the cabin Harold had once rented. It was a single-room structure, dusty from disuse. On the table sat an open Bible, its pages curled from humidity. Inside, certain verses were underlined, passages about obedience, betrayal, and God's judgment. Emily flipped through until a folded piece of paper slid out. It was a list. 4 names. Lisa Monroe's was at the top. The others were women Emily recognized from the church directory. "What is this?" Ray muttered. "Looks like his own twisted prayer list," Emily said. Back in town, whispers grew louder. Some believed Harold had snapped after years of being overlooked by the church leadership. Others said Lisa had confronted him about stealing from the offering plates. Judy, the friend who had first raised the alarm, called Emily that evening. "Detective, you might want to know, 2 nights ago, I saw Harold and Lisa argue in the yard. He was shouting something about God's will and paying for her sins." Emily scribbled it down, but her gut told her Harold's sins talk was an excuse for something far darker. The next day brought more frustration. The fishing spot yielded nothing. The other women on the list were alive but frightened. They all admitted Harold had made them uncomfortable, though none had proof he meant harm. Just before sunset, Emily returned to Lisa's garden alone. She paced slowly, scanning the ground. Then she noticed something odd. Behind the shed, the dirt seemed to disturb again, less than a day old. She knelt, brushing the top layer aside with gloved hands. Her fingers hit something solid. Not wood, not stone. It was plastic, the corner of a large, thick garbage bag. Emily's heart slammed against her ribs. And somewhere in the distance, a car engine started. Emily's instinct screamed at her to dig, but the sound of the car engine roaring to life snapped her head up. She sprinted toward the front yard, catching a glimpse of a dark green pickup truck speeding away. Even in the fading light, she recognized it. It was Harold's. "Dispatch, this is Carter," she barked into her radio. Harold Pierce spotted leaving Lisa Monroe's residence at high speed, heading west on County Road 14. "I need all available units to intercept." She ran back to the shed, forcing herself to focus. The plastic bag was big, human-sized. Hands shaking, she pulled out her pocket knife and sliced the top open. The smell hit her first, damp soil, sweat, and something faintly metallic. Inside, she saw fabric, a dress, floral print. The same one Lisa was wearing the last night anyone saw her. But there was no body. Instead, the bag was filled with dirt, torn clothing, and personal items. Lisa's missing house keys, a broken wristwatch, and her silver cross necklace. Emily's mind raced. This wasn't just a hiding place for evidence. It was a taunt. Ray pulled up minutes later, headlights cutting through the dusk. "You're not going to believe this," he said, jumping out his car. A highway patrol unit spotted Harold's truck, but when they tried to stop him, he ditched on a back road and vanished into the woods. Emily told him about the bag. "He's playing games. He wants us chasing him while he covers his tracks. Or worse, finishes whatever he started." Back at the station, they laid out the contents of the bag on an evidence table. One item in particular stood out, a small leather-bound journal. Inside were dated entries in Harold's cramped handwriting. March 14th. She questions my authority. God sees. April 2nd. She invites me into her home, but mocks me with her eyes. May 19th. Tonight, the earth will welcome her. Emily's stomach turned. The last entry was dated the night Lisa disappeared. The next morning, the lab called with an update on the soil samples from the shed area. "Detective Carter," the tech said, The composition of the soil around the shed matches soil from a creek bed about 6 miles south. Looks like it was moved here recently. Emily's pulse quickened. So, if we follow the source location, we might find where he dug first. Ray finished. By noon, they had a search team at the creek site. The banks were muddy, the air thick with the smell of wet earth. Near a cluster of cypress trees, one deputy called out, "Detective, over here." They had found another patch of disturbed ground, wider, deeper. Emily stepped closer, her boots sinking into the soft mud. The team began to dig. Within minutes, the edge of a wooden board appeared, like the top of a crate or a box. They pried it open. Inside, it wasn't empty. A faint gasp came from one of the deputies. Emily froze. It was a body, and from the long strands of silver-streaked hair, she knew. The smell of damp earth and decay hung heavy in the air as Emily stared into the shallow wooden box. Lisa Monroe lay curled inside, her skin pale and mottled. For a moment, Emily thought it was too late. Then Lisa's chest moved. "Get the medic, now!" Emily shouted, her voice cracking. The deputies scrambled, calling for the ambulance as Emily and Ray gently pulled Lisa out. Her hands were bound, her lips cracked, eyes half open but unfocused. Dirt clung to her hair and face. She was breathing, but shallowly, each gasp a desperate fight for air. "Lisa, it's Emily," the detective whispered, brushing soil from her cheek. "You're safe now. We've got you." But Lisa's eyes darted wildly, tears pooling. Her voice was barely a whisper. He said, "He'll finish it. God's work." Ray glanced at Emily, jaw set. He's still close. He wouldn't leave her alive unless he planned to come back. They rushed Lisa to the ambulance, sirens wailing as the paramedics began oxygen and fluids. Emily stayed behind, staring into the tree line, her gut telling her Harold was watching even now. That night, the sheriff's department went on high alert. Roadblocks were set up, drones deployed over surrounding woods. Still, Harold evaded them, like he knew every deer trail and logging road in the county. Back at the hospital, Lisa was stable but shaken. Emily visited her, pulling a chair close to the bed. "Lisa, anything you remember, anything at all could help us," she urged softly. Lisa's hands trembled as she spoke. He was reading verses, saying I was a temptation. Said God told him to cleanse my spirit in the ground. Her breath hitched. He said others before me needed it, but they didn't listen. Emily's mind flashed back to the list of names in Harold's journal. Lisa hadn't been his first target. She was just the first to survive. But the moment Emily left the hospital, an urgent call came in from one of the roadblocks. A dark green pickup, Harold's, had been spotted again, this time near the old Miller barn on the outskirts of town. When deputies approached, Harold stepped out of the shadows, smiling, hands raised as if surrendering. Then he ran. The deputies gave chase, but Harold vanished into the barn. Emily arrived minutes later, her flashlight cutting through the dust and darkness. The barn smelled of hay and rusting metal. Somewhere above on the loft, wood creaked. "Harold, it's over," Emily called. A low chuckle answered her. "No, detective, it's just beginning." Before Emily could respond, a beam of moonlight revealed something in the loft. Another wooden box. And this one was already nailed shut. Emily's heart hammered as she stared up at the loft. The nailed-shut box sat in the moonlight, like a coffin waiting for burial. "Ray!" she called, her voice echoing through the barn. "Get up there." Ray didn't hesitate. He climbed the wooden ladder 2 rungs at a time, while Emily kept her gun trained on the loft. "Harold!" she shouted. "Step away from that box." From the shadows, Harold's voice came low, steady, almost calm. "You think you're saving them, detective, but they're already lost. I'm just sending them where they belong." Ray reached the loft and pried at the box's lid with a crowbar. The nails squealed in protest before giving way. Inside was a young woman, alive but bound and gagged her wide, terrified eyes locking on Ray's. "Got a live one," Ray yelled. In that split second, Harold lunged from the darkness, swinging a rusted metal pipe. It caught Ray in the shoulder, knocking him sideways. The crowbar clattered to the floor below. Emily fired a warning shot into the rafters. Drop it, Harold. But he didn't. Instead, he kicked over a stack of old crates, sending them crashing down toward Emily. She dove out of the way, splinters exploding across the floor. By the time she scrambled up, Harold had jumped from the loft, landing hard but somehow still running. He bolted out the back of the barn, disappearing into the field beyond. Emily chased him, flashlight beams slicing through the tall grass. Her breath burned in her lungs. The moon cast just enough light to see Harold heading for the tree line. She closed the distance, lunging forward to tackle him. They hit the ground hard, the pipe skidding away into grass. Harold twisted beneath her, grabbing at her gun holster. "Get off me," he snarled, spitting dirt. "You don't understand. God gave me this mission." Emily pinned his arm, pressing her knee into his back. "Your mission ends tonight." Sirens wailed in the distance as backup closed in, but Harold stopped struggling and laughed, a cold, empty sound that made Emily's skin crawl. "You caught me, but you'll never find the others." Emily's eyes narrowed. "What others?" Harold only smiled, his teeth catching the moonlight. Harold Pierce was cuffed and shoved into the back of a patrol car, his eyes never leaving Emily's. That cold, knowing smile stayed on his face even as the door slammed shut. The rescued young woman from the barn, identified as 26-year-old Rachel Green, was rushed to the hospital. She was dehydrated but conscious, and she clung to Emily's hand as paramedics loaded her into the ambulance. "Thank you," Rachel whispered, voice breaking. "He said I'd be next after the widow." At the station, Harold refused to answer most questions. He sat across from Emily in the interrogation room, hands folded like he was in prayer. When she slid his journal across the table, he barely glanced at it. "These women," Emily said, tapping the list inside. "Lisa Monroe, Rachel Green, and 2 more names. Who are they to you?" "They were chosen," Harold said softly. "Tested. Some failed. Some passed on." Emily leaned forward. "Where are the others?" For the first time, Harold's smile faltered. "You wouldn't understand. They brought in evidence. The bloodied fabric, the shovel, Lisa's necklace. But Harold's eyes stayed glassy and distant. In the end, he refused to give up the locations. But Emily wasn't willing to let the case hang on his silence. Search teams combed the woods, following every lead from his journal entries. They found shallow graves in 2 separate locations, each containing remains later identified as the other women on Harold's list. All had gone missing in the last 4 years, cases the county had quietly marked as unresolved. Lisa, still in the hospital, became the heart of the trial. She testified in a trembling voice, describing the moment Harold attacked her in her own kitchen, how he dragged her to the shed, tied her up, and buried her alive under the floor. "He said it was God's work," she told the court, "but all I saw was evil." Rachel's testimony confirmed the pattern. Harold targeted women he met through the church, earning their trust before turning on them. The jury took just 3 hours to convict Harold Pierce on multiple counts of attempted murder, and kidnapping. The judge sentenced him to life without parole. When the verdict was read, Harold didn't flinch. He only muttered something under his breath. Another verse, perhaps one last illusion to cling to. After sentencing, Emily visited Lisa in her hospital room one last time. The window was open, letting in the scent of fresh rain. Lisa's hands were still weak, but she clasped Emily's as tightly as she could. "You saved me," Lisa said quietly. Emily shook her head. "You saved yourself. You held on." As Emily left the room, she passed a vase of daisies on the bedside table, their petals bright against the sterile white walls. It was a small thing, but it was life, a reminder that even in the darkest soil, something could still grow. In Cedar Hollow, the garden shed behind Lisa's house was torn down, the earth beneath it dug up and replaced. The ground was planted with sunflowers. Lisa said it was so she would never forget what had happened there, and so she would never forget that she had survived.